kids with dreams and no sense of reality and survived, and we're here. Those are the kind of moments in a life that you just don't get over.
So without any further ado, enjoy the show.
Thank you.
I always get a little nervous when you have to show a film here because in many ways it's like bringing something home to the family.
Yeah, it's shot in Toronto, but you're trying to make it look like New York. I said, yeah, that's great. You know, that's not bad, because the city's like an actor.
Premiering a movie that took me 20 years to make in front of 2,000 people makes me want to cry.
I mean, there was a time that I can remember when people said, well, film will die. It hasn't and it won't, and it's great.
In a photograph from today, please contact the press office. There's volunteers in the room with microphones to assist you with your questions. Please remember to identify yourself and your media outlet. And lastly, if you can turn all devices to silent. It's now my pleasure to welcome our moderator for today, Johannes Schneller, and the director and author and members of the cast for the film Room.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the TIFF press conference for the movie Room. We're super excited to have this movie here because the book was partly born here. And so I'm very excited to be able to talk to Emma Donoghue, the writer of the book and the screenplay, Joan Allen, Jacob Tremblay, Brie Larson, and the director, Lenny Abramson. So I'm going to ask the first couple questions and then we'll toss it all to you, okay? Emma, let's start with the original notion and what came to you and what made you create the book in the first place.
My children were 4 and 1, and I happened to hear about the Fritzl case in Austria. And I thought, I would like to write a story about a child seeing our world for the first time. But I didn't want to set it in Europe. I wanted to get it well away from the Fritzl case. So I thought, should it be Canada? And then I thought, no, because 2 reasons. When they emerge into the outside world, I wanted them to be entering a society that just assumed it was the best place in the world. I thought America might do well for that. I didn't want anyone to be sort of self-deprecating in the outside world. I wanted that assumption of, here you are, you've come to utopia. And also I wanted them to be worried about healthcare. And so I thought, can't set it in Canada. So it's set in pre-Obamacare America. But it was very much a novel about motherhood for me. It was about that, magical and yet confining bond that so many mothers and fathers experience these days.
And did the reaction to the book surprise you? Because, it's not the easiest read in the world. A lot of it is very harrowing, but people seem to have really embraced it. What was that like for you?
I've never seen it as that dark a story because the child is loved. That's the thing. You're never seeing anyone be mean to that child. He's getting a best case scenario of intense 24 hours a day mother love. So I think anyone who felt the story was dark at first then kind of find their way through the dark tunnels to the light, and the film has exactly the same uplifting effect.
Lenny, you really wanted to direct this. You really went for it. Can you tell people about that a little bit and why?
Yeah, I read the novel a little bit after it came out and was like so many readers just hugely captivated by it. I also have young children and my boy was about 4 when I read it. So that I think just opened me up emotionally to what Emma had done in a particularly vivid way. And I was presumptuous enough to think that I was the person that should turn this best-selling novel into a film. But, I was, along with Ed Guiney and Element Pictures, who I work very closely with in Dublin, we were sort of saying, well, maybe not. And then we heard that Obama had been pictured coming out of a bookshop in Martha's Vineyard on his holiday with Room under his arm. We thought, well, we are not going to get this novel. We are absolutely not going to get this novel. But I wrote a long letter to Emma, and in it I sort of outlined what I felt the kind of inner logic of the novel was and how that might be translated into film. And I also did my best to spoil any other bids by saying things like, well, of course people will say you should do the following, but that would be a terrible mistake. So I was trying to second guess the other pitches, but eventually Emma and I started to talk and we met, and it was it's been an incredibly positive.
I could not resist his eloquence and intelligence. What can you do?
Oh, Emma, thank you.
Was there anything in particular, Emma, that grabbed you? Anything that Lenny said that really thought, this is the guy?
He just got it, And also his previous films just broke my heart with their combination of kind of artistic purity and human warmth. Because sometimes art house cinema can be kind of coldly cerebral. So to find an art house background combined with that human, burningly liberal impulse, it was just a unique combination that I knew we needed for this film.
And was writing the screenplay part of the deal?
Yes, I said from the start, I had drafted the screenplay already before publication because I thought that would be a good way to have a go at it before anyone could talk me out of it. And yes, I said I always want to be part of this, but he knew that I was really eager to learn. So he used to fly to London, Ontario and sit at my kitchen table for a week at a time, helping me understand what film really was. And every now and then I'd write something and he'd say, to TV, and we'd cut it.
That's it. That's my TV career over.
Your TV will not be to TV.
Thank you.
Does anybody in the audience want to throw a question out now? Yes, Bruce in the front row, please.
Good afternoon, Bruce Kirkland, Toronto Sun. This is a question following up on what you, Emma and Lenny have been talking about. And that's in regards to the fact that this is a fictional story, and yet it's informed by real life because there are cases. And I'm curious if it was ever a cloud over your heads as the filmmakers because of the true stories and maybe you had to be really delicate. So I'm curious about that aspect of it while staying true to your own story.
My sense is that because there's so much, true crime stuff out there and video footage of real cases, that made us feel all the more keen to stay away from all that and to remember that it's really not a crime thriller. It's really a love story that just has this rather strange premise. Any?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we were very careful to not reference any specific cases, so we needed to know what was out there in the news just so that we could avoid it. I did look at materials around some of the cases because I was fascinated to know it's amazing to be able to say, for example, look at a homecoming, and there are some of these homecomings on, captured by news crews, and there's something, so I was informed by the shapes and patterns of those news stories and how that was covered. But I think we ourselves, and like in any really good piece of storytelling, it has to be about those specific characters. You can never get into this idea of a sort of generic protagonist. So we just stuck to the truth of the characters that we were dealing with and made sure not to, by mistake, reference any real people.
Bree, can you talk about what drew you in, where you first heard about the project, and why you wanted to do it?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I had originally read the book and absolutely loved it, and I devoured it in a day. And it was the first time I had cried while reading a novel since I read Where the Red Fern Grows in 4th grade. And the escape scene in particular, it was a moment that completely suspended my disbelief. I didn't think that they would get out safely, even though I had about 100 pages left in my right hand waiting for me to read, and I just still couldn't comprehend that it could go on any longer. And I just fell in love. I just fell in love with them. Then when I found out that there was a film happening about it, it was sort of brought to my attention as like, this is a really incredible, very special project, and you will never be cast in it. And so I ended up just trying to work as hard as I possibly could, first in my meeting with Lenny, which was supposed to be a sort of casual, maybe 30-minute coffee meeting, and turned into like a 4-hour, talkathon about everything, showing each other pictures of our dogs. He was showing me pictures of his kids, and by the end of it, I felt one step closer to really falling head over heels for it, because in order to play something that requires to go to such a dark, deep place, the main requirement is that you're surrounded by loving, supportive people, and the fact that he was a parent, and a lot of the key people, a lot of the adults that were around me while making this were all parents and parents of young children, and that was so comforting to me to know going into it. And then, I don't know, sometime later, he asked any girl who was interested in the project to audition, and I auditioned, and I got it.
And she was amazing. And also just to say, Brie has this very special quality as an actor, which is that she can go to those very dark and emotionally raw places, but she does it with such kind of simplicity and grace. There's no showboating. There's none of that kind of projected actorly intensity that you sometimes find, which I find very off-putting. There's just a truthfulness and an honesty about the performance, and we kind of all felt that that was going to happen, and it did.
Questions in the audience? Yes?
Hi there. Jane Mulcairns from the UK. First of all, congratulations. The film's so beautiful. I haven't stopped sobbing for about the last 24 hours. I saw Brooklyn and then Beast of No Nation and this. Just stop wearing makeup now. But it's a question for Brie. I read that you spent quite a lot of time researching this quite intensively in terms of seeing a trauma specialist and also apparently barricading yourself in your apartment for long periods of time.
I mean, I had the key to my house. It wasn't like I locked myself in. But
I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about thinking yourself into the role of someone who's been, not seen the outside world for 7 years.
Sure. It's an interesting space to imagine being in that place for 7 years. If it was like she had been in there a week, you can imagine there would have been this constant intensity. But after 7 years, there's some interesting things that happens where the brain sort of learns to shut off awareness to certain things so that it can cope, because the body just wants to survive. It wants to find the good in whatever it has in front of it. So, yeah, I did spend some time. I spent a month at home. I had read a bunch about, and I had some friends actually that went on these silent retreats, which includes no eye contact either, because that's also considered a form of communication. And a lot of them didn't make it through. Like, you get 3 days in and they're like, oh, yeah. Like all of your thoughts start to pop up. So I wanted to see what would happen. And some very interesting things happened to me while I was doing that. A lot of old memories resurfaced. I remembered a lot about my childhood that I forgot about. And one thing in particular that I remembered was when I was born in Sacramento, I moved to Los Angeles with my mom and my little sister. I was 7, and I think my sister was about 3 or 4. And we moved into a studio apartment that was a little bit bigger than room, and we also had a door to a toilet, so there was a little bit of separation there. But the bed came out of the wall. It was a room. And I had about 2 pairs of jeans and a couple of shirts and a pair of shoes. My sister the same, my mom the same. And we had, I think, maybe a handful of toys, not much. My mom couldn't even afford Happy Meals at that time. We were just eating top ramen for every meal. And I remember that time as being one of the greatest times of my life. I was so happy. My mom has this incredible imagination, and she instilled so much life in that space that I never felt like I was lacking, and I didn't realize that we didn't have anything. And then there was one moment that I also remembered in this silence that really struck me and moved me very deeply, where we would all 3 sleep in that same bed that came out from the wall. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night to my mom with her hands like over her mouth, trying to be quiet, but just sobbing uncontrollably, convulsions, sobbing, shaking. And I didn't know why. And I remembered thinking, it's like when my toy is taken away from me. And I didn't realize until many years later that my father had asked for a divorce, and that's why we had moved to Los Angeles. And she was dealing with it completely alone, but had created this world of imagination with me and my sister. So sometimes you never really fully understand why you're attracted to a project until you start getting deeper into it. And that, for me, it's giving me chills talking about it, was such a huge part of my life and something that was so palpable to me to bring to this film.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Bree. That's amazing.
Hi, Nadia from South Africa Eyewitness News. Bree and Jacob, can you talk about, did you do anything off screen to develop the relationship on screen? And I'm also interested, Jacob, how are you finding this experience? What is it like being at a film festival for you? And Lenny, if you could maybe talk about finding Jacob and what makes, he's excellent in the film. Thanks.
What did we do to hang out?
We played Lego and other different kinds of toys.
Yep. And we built the toys that you see in room.
But not all.
Yeah, there was a couple of things, you're right, that were already there. But you built the boat. That was a pretty cool boat. And you built a laser.
The laser?
Laser gun.
Oh, yeah.
And Jacob, how are you finding all of this? Like, what's it like for you? Do you like being in a film festival? Do you like this? Is weird? What's it like?
There's lots of people here. So it's kind of like Disneyland, so I like it a lot.
So when you think of Disneyland, you just think of lots of people?
Yep.
There's no rides here.
It's still fun.
Okay, it's still fun. Good.
So fun. Lenny, did you want to address that part about finding
sure.
Jacob?
Well, finding the actor to play Jack was probably the most. Well, it was the biggest risk of the whole project because we had 6 months, and the way if you're looking to cast a child, you set the date of the film and then you look for the child because you can't cast 2 years out or a year out even because kids change so fast. And through great casting directors, we scoured the US and Canada, and there were lots of wonderful kids and fascinating kids. But two things: Jake is when we shot was at this point where he felt. For Emma's novel to work and for this story to work, you have to be just between kind of baby and boy. There's just this moment of possible understanding, and if the child feels too young, you don't believe that he's capable of doing what he has to do in the story. If he feels that little bit older, then you think, well, he would not still be living within this fantasy that his mother has created. So the window for us of finding that's already small enough. And then this child has to be an extraordinary actor. And really, I say that like it's not extraordinary child actor, but an extraordinary actor. And Jake is an incredible actor. Jake, I know you're going to, I know I normally don't say
You're
reading.
just saying that.
I'm not just saying that. You know it's true. I've said it to you. I've said it to myself. And so when I met Jake and first saw him on tape and then met him in person, it was just this incredible feeling. There were sort of two moments in preparing for this film where I thought this could work. Obviously, I never suggested there were any doubts to anybody else, but to myself, one was when I met Jake in LA and started to work with him and realized this boy is not just comfortable in front of camera, he's directable, he's emotionally intelligent, he's great fun, all those things. And then when I saw Bree and Jake together in the room set, which we completed several weeks before we needed to shoot on it so that they could spend time there, and I saw them playing together and making craft things, and I just thought that feels really good.
Joan, do you want to talk a little bit about what drew you, sort of the mother-grandmother aspect of the story, what you saw in that and what you wanted to play?
Well, I had read the book originally when it came out and was very taken with it, like everyone else, and was really pleased to be offered the part and reread the book. And I had seen Bree do Short Term 12, this wonderful film, and was completely blown away by her work in that. And it just seemed like an incredible project to be part of. And that, there is, when something this catastrophic happens to a family, obviously the worst thing is, Bree's, Ma's captivity, but, the parents of a child that happens to, it doesn't really get much worse than that in life. And so I felt like it was, I thought about the character and how she would have reacted upon her abduction and how did she process it and what kinds of things did she try to do to take care of herself, and her marriage didn't survive as a result, and she then got in this relationship with a friend of the family, and it's just there was kind of trauma all around, but I just thought that it was a lot about treading in a world, because it's a new world for them to come out, and it's a new world for the grandmother too, because this kind of loss and this kind of reunification is an enormous thing to process and to figure out and to not say the wrong thing, and it's a very, very delicate time, and really the trauma in Ma's situation is, it really comes barreling through once you're free, right, Bree? That your brain has kind of held it off, but then once you can let go, then the horror really kind of sets in more and more and more, and that as a mother, seeing your daughter go through that is also equally very, very difficult. It's like, I want to send her the life preserver. I want to send her, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to.
Joan was actually my real life preserver, because we shot this movie almost completely in order. Thank you. And the only person that I was hanging out with for all day was this guy. And he's just like my best friend and my pal, and we were so comfortable with one another and did everything together, pushing, hanging off of one another, always talking about things. And so by the time I hit the point when we come home and I'm reunited with Joan, with my mother, I realized that I felt incapable talking to an adult. I suddenly was like, I don't know how to not talk about Star Wars and which animal would beat what in a battle. I didn't know how to do it. And I felt so fragile and so afraid. And like Joan was saying, the way the brain works, that within room, Joy wouldn't be able to process the things that were happening to her. She has to suppress them in order to protect herself. So it's not until she's in a safe environment of being back home that then the brain does this funny little thing where it's like, hey, I'm going to just show you a couple images of what happened a couple months ago. Let's see if we want to deal with it. And that's when the real upset and panic, and that's when you really need somebody. And luckily, Ma has her mom to just try and hold her down so that she doesn't just completely spin out of control. And beyond that, I'm 25 years old now. I go on these jobs alone. I'm just like a pioneer going in through new territory, and I was diving really deep in this film. And you spend more time playing a character than you play yourself, and it was invaluable to have Joan there, because every day she would give me the greatest hugs and the deepest eye contact, and had such understanding and care for what it was that I was doing, that she was such a help and support within the scene and also off camera as well.
Thanks. Questions out there? There was this lady. Yep. Oh, sorry. Sorry, she was next. I'm sorry, then I'll get you.
Hi, this question is for Jacob. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Are you in school? Do you have brothers and sisters? You're so fabulous in this. Do you memorize your lines? I mean,
I have 0 brothers. It's not fun. But 2 sisters, but I still have 3 really fun cousins. To practice, I practice with my mom or my dad, and there's a script, right? And I read all my lines, and I practice them in my head all over again. And my parents help me with that.
And what about school? And where do you live? Where are you from?
I'm from Vancouver, Canada.
And what else do you like to do?
For school, there's a room. Not a bad one.
I hope not.
And there's a tutor that teaches me school.
When you're at work. Nice. Question in the front row. And Anybody else who has, we just have time for a couple more because these guys have to take off. So if you have one, raise it up. Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Nigel Smith with The Guardian. I just wanted to know, given what Emma said about the Fritzl case and how that factored into the writing of the novel, how that factored into, I guess this is for the actors, to your performance, and what your initial gut reactions were to when you first heard about the case.
The Fritzl case? Yeah. About hearing about it?
Hearing about it and how it factored into your performance at all.
Well, I mean, I read about it after, before doing the film, and I read about other cases that happened as well. I really wanted to talk to J.C. Dugard's mother, but she, I don't know if she was a very famous case in the States at least, and she had been abducted for 18 years and had 2 children, and but I wasn't able to arrange having that conversation. But I did get to see her some YouTube things online about the mother of her discussing what it was like, and it was mainly after they were reunited and the process of healing, how hard it is. And so I kind of thought a lot sort of about, I kind of based things on that case quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Was there one more out there? Are we? Okay, thank you all so much. Thank you for coming, and thank you very much on the panel. Congratulations on the film.